Okay, so today we're going to do a brake job on a 2019 Mazda Miata. Now the first thing you want to do is remove the two bolts that hold the front caliper in place. If we go over to the other side where it's a bit easier to see, I've already taken these out, but they sit right here. They're both 17 millimeter sockets. You take both of these out and then you can drop the caliper, just pull it straight off. It might be a bit tight, you can just kind of try and wiggle it out. Once you have it off, it's better to hook it on something, although in practice brake lines wouldn't rip, but it's still nicer to have it just on something and not dangling off the brake line. Then you want to pull off your old rotor. Shouldn't be that difficult. You just got to shake it side to side, maybe give it a few bonks with a hammer, and just pull it straight off. The ND doesn't really have a nut to secure that in place. So it's just sitting there. Now if you're replacing pads only, then you can take your new pad, clean it up with some brake cleaner and a microfiber cloth, and just stick it back on here. Ideally you'd want to clean this area up a bit with wire brush, but in this case doesn't look too bad. And then you can slide back your front caliper. I'm also going to be doing pads, so it'll be a bit easier because I'm not going to have to open this up. I'll just remove the pads, put this back on, and then I'll show you how to swap out the pads. In terms of rotor prep, all you want to really do is get some brake cleaner. Be careful what you get it on because it's not really nice. Too many things, spider there. But just get a bit on the rotor surface, and then with some kind of microfiber cloth, just go around and rub that dry. You'll see the finish kind of changes. These are shipped with some oil on them on the surface, and your pads don't really like that, so just make sure you get it mostly off, and remember to flip it over and do the other side as well. So same exact thing, just spray it on. You can use a bit less, and wipe it off. Just kind of make sure you're applying a bit of pressure to get everything off there, but really doesn't take too much. And now this rotor is ready to go back on the car, which is, again, easy enough. Pretty much just stick it on there. Orientation doesn't really matter unless you want to keep that rust spot in the same place. You just stick it on. You'll see that it kind of droops down. So a way to make things a bit easier on yourself is just to take one of the lug nuts and run it all the way down, just hand tight. First make sure you seat the rotor in all the way, and then that's going to hold it pretty much in place. Good enough for the rest of the job. Now to get the rotor back in, the caliper back in, what we want to do is first try and open it up a bit. Just with your hands is fine. You can use tools, there are different ones I'll show you in a bit, but just try and open it up so that it'll fit over the rotor. Once you have the caliper back in place over the rotor, you'll see that these bolts are going to line up with those. So the caliper basically goes in between the rotor and whatever this is. And then just use those same bolts. I like to start with the top one just because it kind of holds everything in place and usually is a bit easier to get in. You'll notice I turned the steering wheel to the side here. That makes things a little bit easier. If you're doing pads and rotors at the same time, one thing you can do is pop out the pads. You just push them in basically from the outside before you put your caliper back on, and then you won't need to push it back as much. Once you get it on the bolts, just hand tighten them. Make sure you're not torquing them down yet. We'll do that at the very end with everything else. And once you have both bolts in, we'll work on getting the new pads in. So for pads, there are a few steps. First step, obviously getting the pads out. Now if you're not doing rotors, you can do this the same way as the next step, which is you take a 14 millimeter socket, you put it right here on this lower bolt on the caliper, and, sorry, you don't want to tighten it. Just want to take that all the way out. And then you can just pull this entire portion upwards. Now what that does is that exposes the entire piston for the caliper. At this point, if you do have your steering turned, it might make things a bit difficult, so you can turn it back center, but you don't necessarily have to. You can see with everything straightened up, you have some more play in the line, and you can pull everything all the way back. I like to keep that bolt back in there just to keep it snug. In theory, you should also lubricate these pins every once in a while, but honestly, I don't have the right materials to use, so I won't be doing that. You do want to make sure that they can move freely. For the upper one, you can kind of push this back and forth. You can see it's moving. I can feel that there is some lubricant in there, and it should be fine. The lower one's always going to feel harder because you don't have that mass moving with it, but you just want to make sure that that one's also moving a little bit. Sometimes it'll feel a bit stuck. You can overcome that, and then you'll feel it move freely again. Here we go. So now that I've pulled it out, I can feel, yeah, it's going pretty good right now. I feel like there is some lube in there. Should probably get this done the next brake job, but not catastrophic. Now you want to start with two things. The first is depressing the cylinder. The second is your new pad prep. So for depressing the cylinder, there are a lot of different ways you can go around it. You could honestly just use your fingers. You could put an old pad here and just put a vice grip up there. I got one of these off of AliExpress. Honestly, pretty good deal. And I just stick in the old pad, stick in this piece of Chinesium, and then, well, it's just a screw, so you can kind of screw it in, and that'll depress the cylinder right there. So you want to push it, honestly, as far as it can go, depending on what you're replacing. I'm doing pads and rotors. You can see the pads aren't super done, but they are pretty far gone, and the rotors are, well, they're done. So I'll push it as far as I can go, and just kind of hold it there for now while we do the pad prep. So for pad prep, it depends what you get with your pads. Usually you won't get much of anything. I do recommend picking up some grease, specifically for pad grease, or sometimes it'll be called caliper grease. Any sort of grease for that. I got this one with a set of Hawk pads, which is supposed to be high temp. I don't know if that makes any difference. I'm putting on Endless MX72 Plus pads and replacing these old Hawk ones. So in terms of prep, what you want to do is, in general, you don't really need to touch the surface at all. You do want to grease up the sides here, and there's some hardware you want to carry over. So you'll notice that both sides of the pad aren't really identical. You have the piston side, and you have the, I don't know what to call it, but the outer side. What you want to do is make sure you move everything over from this side to that side. Now, in this case, I think these ears are the wrong way up. They're supposed to be on the upper part of the pad, as far as I can tell. So I'm going to be starting with the inner piston pad. Start with this tiny clip right there, pretty easy. You can lube up the surface before this or after this, doesn't really matter that much. Now the next thing you want to do is remove these. There are actually 2 layers here, and a bunch of crust in between them, because these did see some high temp use. You'd probably be better off replacing these every once in a while. I'm not doing that in this case, but probably good to do. Now you just want to take them off, clean them up a bit, just make sure they're not too dirty, and then basically you put them on in the same way that they came off. You can lube this up just a bit on the surface to prevent squeaking. I don't know if that's an actual thing in terms of the surface, so I'm not going to use up too much of the lube here, just kind of a touch and smear it around, because like you've seen here, it just turns into crust. Then you have your second layer here. Now this is where I do like to put a little bit of lube, right where the piston ring actually touches the backing here, the backing plate. So just go along those edges. I don't know if you need the entire plate. Probably won't hurt, other than the crust that kind of builds up, but definitely won't hurt to put just a little bit here. In terms of this pad, the prep is almost done. The last thing you want to do is lube up this surface on both sides. So you can go a little bit along this clip and along the side here. Now it's fine to put as much as you want here. You can put way more. Just make sure not to lube this surface up. So I'm going to do the same. After you put on the grease, just go along with your finger or glove or something and kind of spread that around there a bit. Make sure it's still on the right edge. And again, probably better off not getting too much on this surface here. And for this side, that's about it. The other side is pretty much the same. Just try and remember which one is which, because they do have those separate backs. You can see that the piston side has a smaller, stubbier portion, and the outer side has a longer one. And basically you're going to assemble both of those, and then we're going to put them in. Okay, so now that I've gone ahead and prepped both pads, I'm just going to lift this up again and notice, remember which side is which, remember the right orientation. Basically you're just going to place them into this lower portion here. You're mainly focusing on these nubs at the top and the bottom. This is really what holds these in, and you're going to put them in and push them all the way in. That's going to help us reseat everything in a second. Same thing on the other side, kind of do it by feel from the back, or you can, if you kept your wheel all the way to the left, could help you out a bit, although you might not be able to pull this up as much. You basically just want to make sure that everything's seated securely in those clips. It should be pretty easy to feel out once you're used to it, and if you're having issues there, you can just kind of look around. Now I'm going to squeeze these on both sides to make sure everything comes in and remove this bottom bolt. And now remember, you're not just swinging this around, but it also has front and back movement. And these plates are pretty easy to knock off. So I can feel I'm knocking on the front here. I'm just going to kind of use my thumb and pull that back. Now I feel I'm pushing it from the back, so kind of push in here until everything just slides right into place. Then I can take my old bolt. If this pin is in the way, you can kind of push it all the way in. Take my old bolt and place it right back in there. For rear brakes, the caliper process is a bit different. In terms of pads, it's all the same. The bolts themselves are 14 mils instead of 17 mils, and then you just pull off the plate. But for pads, it's a bit trickier because you can't just take out one bolt. You have to take out both of them. And the even trickier part is this. You can't just torque this down or push this down. You have to spin it clockwise. So I'm just using a flathead here, not the flathead itself because it's way too small, but just the length of the screwdriver. You could use whatever fits. I'm just pushing this in with my thumb, making sure I'm not hitting the caliper, and just gently rotating it. You don't really need that much force. If any, it's mostly just keeping it from slipping out. Honestly, you could probably even do it with your fingers. It would just be slow and difficult. You can kind of move it. That does hurt my thumb, so I'm just going to keep spinning it with this flathead until I have enough space. My rear pads are pretty much done, and the new pads are big, thick, endless pads, so I'm going to go through the entire thing. Now, otherwise, not only is everything the same, it's actually pretty much easier. So it is a bit trickier just to pull out the pads because you can't swing this portion off. You can detach the entire thing, but I don't know if that's easier. You can kind of wiggle out the pads, but you'll see there aren't layers of clips or anything. You just have this one clip. You don't have anything on top unless your pads have, I think the stock pads have a scraper that just makes noise when the pads are near the end of their life. As you can see, these pads, you can barely tell the difference, honestly, between the pad and the clip. These pads are pretty much done. New pads for reference are these beefy boys. So you can see it's pretty much over. But all I need to do really is just remove this backing plate, move it over to the new pads, lubricate the I like to lubricate the backing plate around where it meets the actual piston and where it meets these kind of teeth, and you can pretty much see where that contacted. And again, just lubricate the entire tongue over here. Once you've done that, you push these back in. Once you've opened up the caliper, you can pretty much just put it back into place over the pads, and that's about it. Torque these nuts down again to 25 foot-pounds. Make sure that the sliders can move, feel pretty good, and or lubricate them if you have the equipment and feel comfortable with it. You can lube up these rails as well. I did that in the front, but just kind of didn't show it on video. But I just put a pinch of lube around my finger and then kind of wiggle it down there. Being careful to not cut myself. And that's about it in terms of brakes.